Swing and a drive. Hammer deep right. 1-0 Atlanta.
Went in the same spot on the 2-0 pitch, came right back at it, and Robbie was ready for this one.
That's a shot high and deep to left. Way back it goes. It is gone. Home run for Randy Arozarena. A 1-1 pitch, and the Rays break out in front 3-0. Swing drive. Majestic homer. How far? How high? On top of the chop house.
I don't think we've ever seen that here, have we?
And he got him a swing and a miss. And the Rays are winners tonight.
Yikes! The Yankee offensive problems continue.
Oh no! We suck again!
This is WHPC Sports Talk on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
We are broadcasting live from the basement of Building H on the campus of Nassau Community College, and you are listening to WHPC Sports Talk on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. It's Wednesday, October 25th. Liam Flynn, your host, joined in studio today with Ross Levine, Devin O'Shea, and Joshua Umahi. You can call us up at 516-572-7440 or text us at 516-905-WHPC. Going to talk NBA tip-off Knicks-Nets. They open up their season at home tonight. We'll preview Week 8 of the NFL, including the Jets and Giants, who will meet at MetLife on Sunday. But we're going to start off with some baseball. We haven't talked that much baseball on the program recently. The World Series is set. Game 7 of the NLCS was last night. And joining us on the hotline is someone who was there in the flesh and watched the Phillies choke live and in person. He's written for MLB.com and the South Florida Sun-Sentinel and is currently Newsday's Mets beat writer and has been since 2018. Mr. Tim Healey joins us. Tim, it's Liam and the guys on WHPC Sports Talk. First of all, thank you so much for coming on, and how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys very much for having me.
Oh, absolutely, Tim. The World Series, it's set. NLCS Game 7 was yesterday. You were there. You were in person. What did you see? What did you see out of, first of all, the Philly fans who have been the story of this postseason? How did they take to this game?
Very poorly. Phillies fans rightfully credited the last couple of Octobers with creating as loud and rowdy and fun an environment as there is in baseball. But the last 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, Phillies needed one win. The crowd was really into it in the beginning, and then Phillies fall behind a little bit, and just sort of takes the air out of the fans. That you can feel that nervous energy coming in the middle innings. And at the moment of the last out last night, fly ball to right field, routine catch, just stunned silence for a moment. You could hear a pin drop as the Diamondbacks started to celebrate. And then, of course, there was a brief round of boos, and then more boos later for the Phillies fans who stuck around to watch the trophy presentation ceremony. But it was really, the Phillies blew it. You know, for all the fans talk, it's the players on the field who, get to decide their own fate. And this series was on a tee for them. They're much better than the Diamondbacks. They were up 2-0 in the series, and they just blew it.
Yeah, as you said, there was a lot of boos in Philadelphia, which is always music to my ears, and and it's really nice because I always wake up in the morning. Everyone starts their mornings with coffee. I start my morning with Philly tears. But I do want to ask you, the past many World Series we've had were many expected, and this is the first time in the last multiple years that a NL East team is not going to be in it. And Arizona and Texas were not the choices that many people picked. Do you think that the fact that it's going to be Arizona and Texas, two really random teams in this World Series, do you think that's going to take a hit on the World Series ratings from past years?
I don't know. I think I couldn't even tell you what World Series ratings have done the past couple of years, whether they've gone up or down, or how different teams have impacted that. I mean, last year was Philly and Houston, two pretty big markets, I guess. The year before that was the Braves, and I don't even remember who the Braves beat.
I think it was Braves Astros.
Oh, yeah, Braves Astros, of course. Yeah. So I don't know. Dallas is a huge market, so there's probably going to be a lot of people there watching. It's not the sexiest matchup. It's not the matchup that MLB would have preferred if they were, pulling strings and if all this was actually scripted. But the Diamondbacks are a great story. They were a mediocre team that got hot and had some fun players: Corbin Carroll, Zach Gallen, Paul Sewald, their lockdown closer. Who would have thought?
Former Met.
So there's a lot of fun stuff going on. I think the Rangers are a blast too. Some former Mets on that team as well, former Mets and former Yankees. So it's not the sexiest matchup. I get what you're saying, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Tim Healey on WHPC Sports Talk. Josh, you've got a question for the man.
Yeah, Tim, what's up? So you've been obviously the Mets beat writer since 2018. It's only appropriate that I ask you a Mets-related question. Now, I've been a fan as long as I've been alive, pretty much. I was born into this. We finally get Steve Cohen, and 3 years in, we've had a lot of highs, but you have the highest payroll in baseball history, and now you're looking at it. You had the Phillies almost make it to the World Series 2 straight years. The Braves beat us out in the division 2 straight years. But now we're looking forward to this offseason, and you hear a lot of stuff with, obviously, Yamamoto from Japan. Him and Senga would be just a great pairing. With Ohtani, though, and he's obviously, without question, the hottest commodity on the market this winter. Can you give some insight into how much the Mets may be interested? You hear a lot of stuff. Maybe he wants to stay close to the West Coast, maybe stay with the Angels, maybe go to the Dodgers, stay close to his home in Japan. But if I know Steve Cohen, I know he wants to win at all costs, and literally all costs. He'll spend whatever it takes. So can you give some insight into that whole situation and the Mets' plans spending-wise this offseason?
I thoroughly expect the Mets to be involved in Shohei Ohtani's free agency. If you read between the lines and what Steve Cohen has been saying, what he said this month, what he said in August after the trade deadline, it sounds like that the days of blank checks to build a team are pretty much over for Steve Cohen. The Mets still will have huge payrolls regularly, I have to assume. But they aren't going to go all in like they have in the recent past. That said, Ohtani's an exception. He is the best baseball player in the world. He is an unrivaled talent, a marketing bonanza, a huge figure in Japan where Steve Cohen does business with his hedge fund and has visited quite a few times. So I expect the Mets to be thoroughly involved in that. Whether Ohtani signs with the Mets, I would not bet on that happening just because there will be so many teams that want to sign him, including quite a few who will be able to offer the hundreds of millions that he'll probably get. Does Ohtani want to come to the East Coast? Last time around he didn't. Maybe this time he does. Does Ohtani want to deal with all that involves being in New York? I'm not so sure. He had it pretty easy with the Angels all these years. That said, the Angels stunk, unfortunately for them, and unfortunately for Ohtani and Mike Trout. So maybe Ohtani would prioritize winning and deal with the New York stuff. So we don't really know what Ohtani is prioritizing, but I would expect the Mets to prioritize him.
We're talking to Tim Healey of Newsday on WHPC Sports Talk. He said the days of blank checkbooks for players is over. It does seem over. But the Mets have an empty role at the manager's position and at the general manager's position. Can you give us some insight on what's going on with that? Obviously, Craig Counsell, it was just reported that he'll be interviewing with the Mets. Does he look like the front runner for the Mets manager job?
Well, he's definitely the name most prominently linked to the job. I do not consider it as much of a lock as I think Some people do. But there's obviously familiarity there with David Stearns and Craig Counsell. They're 7 years together with the Brewers. So, of course, they're going to explore that possibility. But, honestly, similar to the Ohtani question, does Craig Counsell want to come to New York? I'm not sure. He's a Wisconsin guy. He's going to, talk to some other teams, I would think, too. Maybe take a year off. People talk about that sometimes. So he's he might be the favorite for the Mets manager job, but that doesn't mean that that's over 50% or anything like that. I will say, to the Mets' credit, they have done a really good job of not leaking publicly or leaking to reporters where they're at in their search. We don't really know who else they've interviewed, external candidates, how many candidates, how many rounds of interviews, anything like that. So they've gone about this in a very quiet way, which is different than the way that the Mets historically have operated.
Talking to Tim Healey of Newsday. What about the general manager role? Do you see any front runners there?
Well, no, I don't. I'm not sure that the Mets are even going to fill it immediately. And frankly, it doesn't matter because David Stearns is the general manager. Basically, he just has a higher title and a bigger salary. So if and when the Mets do hire a general manager, that person will be the number 2 baseball executive. Basically, historically, what we would consider an assistant general manager. So it won't be a household name, I would imagine. And, we might not get one, might not find out who it is until, late in the offseason or even this time next year.
So going back to the World Series, with Corbin Carroll and the Arizona Diamondbacks winning against the Philadelphia Phillies last night. First question: if you think that it's a lock for Corbin Carroll to become Rookie of the Year compared to against Senga and Elly De La Cruz.
I would think so. Yeah. Corbin Carroll was so good beginning to end. 30 home runs, 50 steals, the best player on his team. Senga was also very good, not to take anything away from his season. Sub-3 ERA, 29 starts, I believe, bunch of strikeouts, more than a strikeout per inning. Senga was great, but Carroll, I would fully anticipate, will be the Rookie of the Year. So we'll find out in mid-November when awards week comes, so that should be fun.
Yeah, we're counting down the days until the awards are announced. Talking to Tim Healey of Newsday on WHPC Sports Talk. We're going to keep it locked into the World Series right now. Now that the stage is set, what are you expecting out of both of these teams? Or what or who should we be keeping an eye out for on both teams?
Well, I think the Diamondbacks are a little bit better off in that they have their rotation lined up better than the Rangers do. They're going to roll with Zach Gallen, their top starter, in Game 1, and then Merrill Kelly and Brandon Pfaadt, presumably, assuming they keep everybody in order. For the Rangers, we don't really know how that's going to go because they had to use the guy who would have been their Game 1 starter, Jordan Montgomery, in relief in Game 7 on Monday. So they've got to figure that out. They have about 48 hours to do it. So the Diamondbacks have the edge there. But overall, I like the Rangers' chances. Their offense is a powerhouse. As long as Marcus Semien and Corey Seager can wake up, those guys were so good in the regular season. Seager, I'm sure, going to be the MVP runner-up behind Ohtani, but they've been really quiet. They barely did anything really against the Astros in the ALCS. So I like the Rangers' chances overall. But then again, I didn't expect the Diamondbacks to beat the Phillies to begin with. So here we are. The unexpected happens this time of year.
That's always a beautiful sight.
Yes, it is. Tim, like one of the earlier questions noted, Diamondbacks Rangers, from what we expected, start of season, mid-season, that's a surprising World Series. Nobody really saw that coming. So in terms of the postseason format, because I've heard so much talk about this, the added wild cards and how random it is, I hear both sides of the argument. Some say that, it doesn't really reward division winners anymore. some say the randomness is good. It lets you know that as long as you make it into the playoffs, you have a good chance to make it to the championship and win it. So where do you fall on that? Do you think the postseason format is good as is? Do you like the tweaks that's been added with the extra wild cards? Do you like the randomness that's been added to the MLB postseason?
I don't like the extra wild cards. I don't hate the randomness, but we had that already. When they added the first wild card in the 90s, that introduced an element of wildness. So I don't like the current playoff format. There are too many teams. You reward mediocrity. And in life and in baseball, I am not in favor of rewarding mediocrity. The Diamondbacks won 84 games. They were barely above 500. They got outscored by opposing teams on the whole in the regular season, and now they're in the World Series. And yes, they're fun, and there's some good stories in there, but it kind of defeats the point of playing a 162-game regular season. When they expanded the playoffs before last year, it was blatantly a cash grab, right? MLB sold the rights to that new first round, the wild card round, to ESPN before that round even existed. So they're making many millions of dollars off of it. So for that reason, the new playoff format isn't going to go anywhere. If anything, they will add more teams in the future. So it's kind of a bummer. I don't like it, but I'm sort of resigned to the fact that that's just the way it is now.
Talking to Tim Healey of Newsday on WHPC Sports Talk, but doesn't that add to the fun, the fact that you don't know who's going to make it to the World Series? You have no idea coming into the postseason who's going to win it, and obviously you mentioned that was kind of added when they originally added the wild card in the 90s, but now with the two extra teams added on with the new wild card format on each in each league, doesn't that just add to the fun?
Not for me. I get what you're saying. I do. I can follow the logic, but it's just too many teams. It's lowering the bar for what is considered success, and I'm just not into that.
So, Tim, with this season, with this 2023 season almost over, we're going to the World Series Game 1 on Friday. It's season coming to a close, and the experiment of the pitch clock has come to a close for the season. And I want to ask you your thoughts on how you think the pitch clock was this season, and if you think that it should still continue to be in the league, and if it's just not be there. I don't know. Because me personally, I don't really like it very much, but I want to know what you thought of the pitch clock experiment.
I like the pitch clock, and the best part about it is that it's almost never relevant. It almost never gets noticed. It was a huge fundamental change when it got introduced at the beginning of this year, and there were a lot of concerns about rushing players or what impact it's going to have, and it really hasn't had much of any impact other than the desired impact, which is shortening games by 10, 20, sometimes 30 minutes. I think on average it's down like 25 minutes this year. There was a lot of talk in spring training coming into the year about what it would look like in reality. And then the regular season started, and aside from some very initial adjustments and, getting the firsts out of the way, the first strike three for a violation, the first balk, things like that. Aside from that, it didn't really get talked about. And then in the middle of the year, you heard some talk about what it would look like in the postseason, if they'll keep the clock, if they'll make the clock a little longer. And MLB, to their credit, decided no changes. Keep the clock in the playoffs the same way it is in the regular season. And then the playoffs came, and it again did not get talked about at all. It's just a complete non-factor, which is the goal. I think it was a tremendous success.
Talking to Tim Healey of Newsday on WHPC Sports Talk. Josh, you got a question?
Yeah, so Tim, back to the Mets real quick. Can you help me clear up something? Because the series of events after the last game of the season is interesting. because you had Buck Showalter before the last game get canned. And then Stearns is brought on, and then he's publicly in the presser supporting Billy Epler and saying, yeah, he's got a role in this organization. And then days later, Epler is canned because of what was reported, the use of the Phantom IL that, to my knowledge, every team pretty much uses. So it seemed a little, and I know we have to believe the reports as fans, but it seemed a little weird to me, that entire series of events. Can you help add some insight, add some color to that situation?
I think the best thing I can say is, so I'm with you on the Phantom IL stuff. Teams do that pretty routinely. It's against the rules, but everybody does it and pretty much looks the other way. Which it just feels like there's something else there that maybe we haven't heard about yet. I don't know what that is. MLB is doing its investigation now. We'll see what comes of it regarding their findings on Epler and the Mets and potential punishments for Epler or the Mets. But it's weird. So I agree with you. The IL stuff alone would not seem to be that big of a deal. So we'll see what the final verdict is. That's my approach.
So Tim, going back to staying with the Mets, I want to talk about some of my favorite players on this team, and that would be my baby Mets. Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, Alvarez, my favorite guys on the team, next to Nimmo. I want to ask you, so Alvarez, he did struggle at the end of the regular season this year, but he did do very well to start the year. And Vientos and Beatty, they both seemed like they couldn't. They both got sent down and then brought back up. And they really, other than Mauricio, who did really well at the end of the season, Beatty and Vientos, they both seemed to the entire season struggle in the field, struggle batting. Beatty against lefties, they wouldn't put him in, and then they wouldn't. So I want to ask you, like, with Vientos and Beatty, is this a problem? Do you find this a problem to start their career, looking how they did in their first seasons?
With Beatty in particular, yes, he was very good in AAA. He got a shot in the majors. He was the everyday third baseman for several months, and he was so bad that the Mets thought it was damaging, or thought it would have been damaging to his confidence and long-term prospects to allow him to continue to suffer in the majors, which is why they sent him to the minors for a few weeks in August.
Yeah.
Going forward, that's not to say that Beatty is a bust. Mm-hmm. He can still thrive in the majors. He still has a chance, but I am less confident in that happening now than I was this time last year. So I don't really know what's going to happen with him. With Vientos, I am more optimistic. When he finally got a chance to play regularly near the end of the season, he was very good.
Yeah.
He hits the ball as hard as almost anybody, really among the elite in the major leagues in exit velocity, better than anybody on the Mets even. So with Vientos, there's a lot to like there at the plate. If he can just make contact more consistently, I'm not sure that he has a position on the field, really. He might be a DH, but the Mets will have to figure that out. So with the baby Mets, Alvarez, as you said, was overall good on the year. You can pencil him in as catcher for 2024 and beyond. Mm-hmm. But with the other three, Beatty, Vientos, and Mauricio, it's not as clear. The Mets have to try to figure out what they have in those guys and who they can rely on going into next year.
Absolutely. Talking to Tim Healey of Newsday on WHPC Sports Talk. Tim, I got to ask about Pete Alonso. Is there a deal going to get done, whether it's an extension, whether it's a trade? What's the newest update you can give us on the Pete Alonso situation?
Well, I don't expect Pete Alonso to get traded. David Stern said straight up on his first day running the Mets, and he offered this unsolicited. He hadn't even been asked about Pete Alonso. He acknowledged the trade talks, the trade rumors, and said he fully expects Alonso to be the opening day first baseman for the Mets in 2024. if he were to go back on that and trade Alonso in his first major move as the Mets president of baseball operations, would just be an absolute PR disaster for him. So I really, really don't expect that to happen. But I also don't expect an extension to happen right now. My take on this is that I think Pete Alonso will sign long-term with the Mets. I just think it's going to happen once he reaches free agency. I think he's had his eye on free agency. He's, kind of been looking forward to that. He switched agents to Scott Boras recently. So he's going to get his money, and I give the Mets the benefit of the doubt and, think they'll do the right thing, the obvious thing, and keeping him a Met for life.
Well,
it just won't come until about 13 or 14 months from now.
That's music to our ears as Mets fans in this room. Tim, World Series Game 1 on Friday in Texas. Are you going to be there?
I'm not going to be there. David Lennon, our excellent baseball columnist for Newsday, will be there providing coverage for all of our readers. So shout out to him. But I'll be enjoying and watching from home. How about that?
All right. Tim, tell our audience where everybody could find you, your columns, and where to find you on Twitter.
Sure. Newsday.com/Mets is where you can get all of our stories, all of my stories. And on Twitter at Tim B. Healey, Healey.
All right, Mr. Tim Healey of Newsday, thank you so much for coming on WHPC Sports Talk. Enjoy the World Series.
Great. Thank you. You guys as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Tim Healey of Newsday. That was great, wasn't it, guys?
That was a good segment.
What do you think? Has your outlook on the Mets and the World Series, but first of all, on the Mets in particular, has your outlook changed at all after talking with him?
I'm hopeful for Pete Alonso.
Yeah, me too. That was really great to hear.
The Alonso thing is very encouraging because for all Alonso's flaws, like he's not the greatest fielder, obviously. He doesn't really hit for average. He's still a walking 45 home runs, 100 RBI, so you just can't trade stuff like that, especially like Tim noted, it's David Stearns. That would be his first major move as president, and why would you commit really 10-year suicide like that? That wouldn't make sense. So I'm happy to hear that. Also happy to hear we're not all the way out on Ohtani.
Yeah.
I know the Mets are trying to be smart with their money, but I mean Ohtani's an exception. You got to make exceptions for that rule. So I'm happy to hear that, especially.
Like you said, the blank checkbook days are over, but it's a lot different paying guys who are closer to 40 years old and paying a guy that we've never seen before in Major League Baseball. So,
no more geezers at the the starting pitchers. Don't make 40-year-old pitchers our aces no more. That's all I ask. If David Stearns don't do that to start out, that's a good start.
Mr. Stearns, if you're listening, please just back off from everybody north of what do you call it, 34? Yeah,
please, and resist the urge to pay Aaron Nola 200 M's. We don't need to do that. No, that's not what we need.
All right. So no Aaron Nola, David Stearns.
Me personally, he's not my favorite.
Give me a little Ohtani and Yamamoto.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
Match him up with Senga. I mean, this would be.
Imagine a rotation of us having Ohtani, Yamamoto, Senga, Quintana, who did an excellent when coming back from injury last season, and then I'll throw him in there, Joey Lucchesi, who did incredible last season to end the year.
Lefty Lucchesi.
That'd be an incredible rotation. I'd love that. I would.
I wouldn't mind that. And it's not old, we're not relying off of, elderly people pitching.
I know Ohtani will not be pitching next year, which is
obviously,
yes. But for getting another pitcher just filling for just next year, that'd be perfect.
And there's a good chance that he still probably hits next year, right?
Oh yeah,
we can still stick him in the lineup as a DH, which the Mets desperately need.
Imagine Pete Alonso as a 3-hitter and Ohtani as a 4. I mean, I'd probably do Pete Alonso 4th and Ohtani 3rd.
I'd flip-flop him personally.
Ohtani does more average.
Yeah, I'd flip-flop him, but I'm not the manager, and nobody's the Mets manager yet, so we'll keep you...
You want to come over?
Yeah, he's interviewing with them, apparently. It's WHPC Sports Talk till 5. You could call us up at 516-572-7440. That's 516-572-7440, or you could text us at 516-905-WHPC. We're going to take a quick break, But after the break, we're going to talk some NBA and NFL.
Woo!
Exciting. Josh has his Knicks jersey on. That's Carmelo Anthony, right?
The lucky jersey. Lucky jersey. I got a great winning record in this jersey. Hopefully it continues today.
It's not the Nuggets 15.
Oh, don't get me started.
Do you remember the record off the top of your head, Josh?
Something like 7 wins and 2 losses.
All right.
Including the playoffs.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty
We're
good.
going to have a good game tonight, Josh. We're going to have a good game.
Hopefully I do. Hopefully you do.
Yes. We're going to get into it all on the other side of this break. You're listening to WHPC Sports Talk on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.